You don't go to school, you can't be educated.
New details about the 16 Siders children and the paper trail that suggests someone was searching for them long before they were ever found.
So when we're talking reading and writing and education, we're talking a whole nother level of expectations here.
I have the explosive records that reveal this story began long before we thought it did, plus the big move made by the judge to stop people from talking about the case. I'm Anjanette Levy, and this is Crime Fix.
For nearly 4 years, in a village of fewer than 200 people where longtime residents swear they know every face on every porch, 16 children were living behind a closed door on Omar Street. And almost nobody outside that house had any real idea what was happening inside. That's the detail investigators still can't fully explain about the Ohio case now being called the House of Horrors. But there's something even more unsettling than the discovery itself, because newly surfaced court records show a government agency in a completely different Ohio county raised red flags about this exact family years before deputies ever set foot inside that home, and somehow the warning went nowhere. It was June 30th when deputies and agents with Ohio's Bureau of Criminal Investigation arrived at the property in Hamden, Vinton County, to execute a search warrant tied to an unrelated case, one that investigators have suggested may connect to a separate public indecency charge against Gary Siders Jr. Although officials still haven't confirmed exactly what that warrant was for or how directly it links to what they ultimately found inside. What they found instead was 16 children, ranging in age from about a year and a half to 18 years old, living in conditions authorities have compared to something you wouldn't expect to find outside the developing world. Officials say the children were largely confined to a space roughly 12 feet by 12 feet.
Scenes.
Can I ask the both of you, what did you feel like walking through there? Not necessarily what it looked like or the description, but what was going through your mind?
So it was disgusting even where the kids weren't. I would think it's typical. Most law enforcement have experience with homes in a similar fashion. A large number of people, though, the children were kept in a roughly 12 by 12 area that it seems like is where they've spent the most of the last 4 years, and that's what it looks like. In a weird way, you're hit with two emotions. There is joy when we realize that we're about to change 16 lives for the better, but you're also
filled with human waste for as long as 4 years. The sheriff on scene went as far as to say local livestock are typically kept in better conditions than these kids were. Several of the children,
Omar Street, the children, according to the state attorney general, were not in good shape.
Through that right now, some of these children couldn't even speak. Yeah, so I mean, we're talking. This is very. It was terrible. I mean, they looked like almost feral animals. It was terrible. So when we're talking reading and writing and education, we're talking a whole nother level of expectations here. Like it's hard enough just to get these kids to be able to
unable to write their own name. And investigators say the developmental toll on some of these kids appears severe. All 16 were hospitalized after the rescue and have since been released into foster care, while the home itself
remains a question. Thankfully, the children have all been released from the hospital. They're with foster families. The house on Omar Street remains taped off by crime scene tape. The conditions inside have been described as something you wouldn't even see in a third world country. Videos circulating online show the filth in the house. The children were kept in a 12 by 12 room, according to the sheriff.
As I was saying, most of our livestock was kept in better conditions than the children. It was extremely high presence, I'm sure, of bacterial and human.
remains sealed off behind crime scene tape. 4 adults now face charges in connection with the case. Gary Siders Sr. and his wife Christina, along with their son Gary Siders Jr. and his wife Elizabeth, each charged with 16 counts of child endangering, one for every child found in that house. All 4 have pleaded not guilty, and if convicted on every count, they could theoretically be looking at.
It's hard.
4 Siders family members, Gary Siders Sr. and his wife Christina Lynn Siders, Along with their son, Gary Jr., and his wife, Elizabeth Siders, face 16 counts of child endangering. They've all pleaded not guilty to the charges. Gary Sr. has been released from jail and placed in a hospital after he fell and a more serious condition was discovered. The last we heard, he was still in the hospital. The Vinton County prosecutor says the children were found in the house, but that the family was not from Vinton County.
I want to stress that our focus right now is on the safety of the children. These kids are being evaluated medically, and we're trying to get them placed, and that is our primary concern right at this point. I also want to stress this is not conduct that is acceptable in Vinton County. These individuals were not from Vinton County. This is not appropriate and certainly is not reflective of the Vinton County values.
Well over a century behind bars combined. Because Vinton County is one of the poorest and least resourced counties in the entire state, prosecutors brought in an outside special prosecutor from a neighboring county to help handle the case. A move officials say won't cost local taxpayers anything extra, but one that also underscores just how thin this county's resources were to begin with. But here's where this stops being just a horror story and starts being a systems failure story, because the state of Ohio may have had a chance to catch this years earlier and didn't.
County values.
Now, I've told you that the family was originally from Gallia County. Gallia is the county south of Vinton, and records show the family moved to Vinton County about 4 years ago. And there was likely a reason for that move. The puzzle pieces here, they're fitting together. They are painting the picture. It's becoming very clear. I've been telling you for the last week that Children's Services had been looking into the Siders family. That look at them started in Gallia County back in 2021. The juvenile court in Gallia County went looking for the Siders after the older children didn't show up for school. The Siders' home at that time was on Honeysuckle Drive in Cheshire. That's the address listed on the court documents. These records show that in October 2021, complaints had been filed against Elizabeth and Gary Siders because 6 of their children were considered truant, meaning they were chronically absent from school. The complaint states the child's name, which we have blacked out. Then it states that Gary and Elizabeth have failed to cause said child to attend some school or class as required by law. The child has been absent from school without legitimate excuse for the entire 2021-2022 academic year to present an amount in excess of 72 hours for the school year, and as such is thereby a habitual truant.
Habitually truant under Ohio law. That kind of total, prolonged absences.
Complaint is for 6 of the 16 Siders children. Of course, some weren't even born yet. The oldest at that time would have been 13. In the state of Ohio, it's illegal to not send your children to school. Parents have a duty and an obligation to ensure their child is in school. The statute states that parents whose children are determined to be habitually truant and do not get their kids to school can face fines or even child neglect charges. Eventually, the complaints were terminated in January of 2022. A document states the court finds that Elizabeth Siders is unable to be served and the whereabouts of Elizabeth Siders are unknown to the court. Therefore, it is hereby the order of the court that the above matter be terminated.
Supposed to trigger real intervention, and legal analysts who track juvenile cases note that chronic truancy is one of the most reliable early warning signs the system has, with kids who vanish from school rolls for months at a time showing up.
But it's true.
No, that's exactly right. And at least I started actually a truancy program, even though you would think a district attorney would not focus on truancy. But I was finding that the people who were 15, 16, and 17, we were binding over for trial as an adult, that their first contact was a truancy charge. Whether it was a robbery, a burglary, or a homicide, their first contact with the court was truancy. And my thought process was, if we can get them into school and get them graduated, that will help both with employment. And I believed correctly that it would prevent them from starting down that road of crime. But you have to go through a registration process and have it approved by the school district and others that you're going to homeschool the children, and that wasn't
disproportionately in the justice system years later. Instead, in this case, the intervention never really happened, and the case quietly died. Court documents from January of 2022 state that Elizabeth Siders could not be located or served, and that her whereabouts, along with the children's, were unknown to the court. The matching case against Gary Jr.
terminated until the availability of Elizabeth Siders. The same document was filed for Gary Jr., the named father of the children. The court couldn't find Gary and Elizabeth or the children. The children had to have been registered for school, but the school district said they never attended, not even for a day, it would seem. That raises the question, had the Siders already moved in 2021? Were they still in Gallia County, or had they already moved to Vinton County? I have found records showing that Elizabeth had a P.O. box in Hamden as early as 2020, and she and her family are listed as living in this house on Main Street in Hamden before they moved a short distance away.
Closed for the exact same reason. In other words, the system tried to check on these kids back in 2021, couldn't find the family, and simply moved on. What makes that even harder to sit with is that the family may not have exactly vanished. Property and mailing records indicate Elizabeth had a P.O. box registered in Hamden as early as 2020, and that the family was living openly on Main Street in that very village, just a short distance from the Omar Street home where they'd eventually be found, all before the Gallia County truancy case was even closed out. So while a judge in one county was ruling this family's location was unknown, they may have already been living in plain sight in the exact village where they'd eventually be discovered years later. Whether anyone ever connected those dots is now a question hanging over multiple agencies at once, and it's not only the school system either. Neighbors in Hamden describe a small town where everybody supposedly knows everybody. Yet 16 children living in filth reportedly escaped notice for years, and in the days after the story broke, people reportedly drove in from neighboring counties just to stand outside the property, trying to make sense of how something like this could.
Distance away to the home on Omar Street. People have been drawn to that house. I met several there over the weekend. They don't understand how something like this could happen.
Just curious about this whole situation, because how can a whole family live like that and no one know it? I wanted to see like how close were neighbors. Usually in small towns, neighbors are friendly with each other, so how would you not know what's going on?
You live a couple counties away, right?
Yes, in Lawrence County.
So you live in Lawrence County. You came out here to see what was going on. This is out in the southeastern part of the state. Is it common for people to live like this with 16 children, filth, that you are aware of?
I mean, there are definitely places in each county, I'm sure, that have large families that have trouble taking care of everybody, that CPS doesn't know about and doesn't step in. And I think every county probably has some of that going on. It's just usually neighbors help take care of you, though. That's the best thing about living in a small town. Everybody knows everybody, so how would you not know that's
Stay hidden in a place that small. Other institutions had contact with this family too, and at least on paper, had reason to ask questions. Elizabeth Siders reportedly gave birth to multiple children in hospitals over the years, including twin daughters in November of 2022, who tragically died the same day they were born.
And, that's a question I've been raising. If you go to the hospital and you have baby after baby after baby after baby, and you're not employed, it appears they're not employed. Like, does the hospital have a duty to say, like, how are you taking care of these kids?
Well, at least I think it's a legitimate question to ask, and I got to think they were on some kind of support, whether it's food stamps
Right.
or otherwise, and so you have to register for that at Jobs and Family Services. So at least somewhere along the line, and maybe, and I think it's true in some of the smaller counties, people are less nosy, if you want to call that, about the neighbors, and intentionally say what's it's not my business. But here with 16 kids, and there were two others, as you know, that were born that died shortly after. They were conjoined twins. That somewhere having 18 kids over 18 years. Now there were multiple births and twins, but still that would cause somebody with that information, be it hospitals, OBGYNs, medical doctors that looked at a mom, prenatal.
Conjoined and delivered at just 24 weeks. With that kind of repeated contact with the medical system and apparently no steady household employment, there are now open questions about.
They're a poor county, and therefore they probably have budgetary restraints. But certainly, somehow, somewhere, these folks and their children, if not at a hospital that has delivered 10 kids over a period of a few years, would maybe have even a mandatory duty to report the circumstances and situation to the authorities for them to look at it. Obviously, in Gallia County, it came to their attention by virtue of the lack of attendance, and that's 5 years ago. So within the last 5 years, somebody somewhere should have been looking to the circumstances of these children and their parents.
Whether any healthcare provider ever flagged concerns, and about exactly who was receiving public assistance on behalf of this family, since at least one local resident has described seeing the family use a benefits card at a nearby store. Prosecutors have said that
prenatal, all those kind of factors fit into it.
Yeah, it's confounding, this whole thing. And when I was in town over the weekend, somebody told me they would come into the Dollar General store and pay with, they called it a food card, which that's like that EBT card. But the question is, who was that card registered to? And we're still trying to get to the bottom of that. Right now, the prosecutor has said, at least as of last week, he said that the grandparents were the only ones that he was aware of who were receiving benefits. But we're going to continue to keep digging into that. I've put some feelers out on that with the Department of Children and Youth, and we're waiting to hear back. So, Ron, thank you. Now let's discuss this gag order signed by Judge Rogers. The attorney for Gary Siders Jr. filed a motion asking for a gag order, citing the comments made by Ohio Attorney General Andy Wilson that I played for you earlier. Attorney R. Lee Roberts said the comments were putting his client and other defendants at risk of not receiving a fair trial. The judge signed the order prohibiting the sheriff, attorney general, or prosecutor from making statements or releasing information about the case or the evidence. So stay tuned for more on
discussing the case or its evidence at all from this point forward. Practically speaking, that means the flow of new information from officials is about to slow to a trickle, and whatever we learn from here on is far more likely to surface through court filings than press conferences. The state legislature has already.
As the investigation into the Siders continues and the prosecutor prepares the case for grand jury, the case is catching the eye of legislators in the state's capital.
On June 30th in Vinton County, we had an unprecedented situation where 16 children at one home at one time were added to the temporary custody of that county, more than doubling the number of children in needing care in that community. We are requesting $1 million in emergency resources to be made available specifically for the care of these children. I've been doing this in one capacity or another for 40 years. I've never seen anything like this. This is to have kids that would be off the radar. A child off the radar is troubling enough. 16 kids in one family in one household, to be off the radar is something that I've just not seen.
Ohio's controlling board approved sending $1 million to the Department of Youth and Children in Southeast Ohio to help care for the Siders children. That amount could just be a drop in the bucket, though.
These kids are safe. They are being cared for. They are receiving treatments. And we expect there to be a lot more services that these children will need to address the traumas that they've received. And some of these things they'll probably be dealing with for life.